Rain drummed against the windows of Murphy's corner store as Lily wiped down the counter for the third time that evening. The old grocery store sat wedged between a laundromat and a used bookshop on Pine Street, the kind of place where people bought milk at midnight and lottery tickets on Friday. At 22, Lily had worked here for 2 years while studying psychology at Portland State University. The pay barely covered her rent, but Mr. Murphy was kind enough to let her study during slow hours. The bell above the door chimed as someone entered, bringing the scent of rain and something else she couldn't identify. Lily looked up from her textbook to see an elderly man shuffling between the narrow aisles. He was tall but hunched, wearing a worn gray coat that hung loose on his thin frame. His white hair was slicked back from the rain, and when he turned toward her, she noticed his eyes were an unusual shade of amber, almost golden in the fluorescent lighting. The man moved slowly through the store, selecting items with careful deliberation. A loaf of bread, some cheese, canned soup, tea bags, and a small container of honey. Nothing unusual, except for the way he examined each item as if seeing such things for the first time. His long fingers traced the labels with an odd reverence, and occasionally he would pause to simply stare at something ordinary like a box of crackers. When he approached the counter, Lily noticed his hands were covered in what looked like old burn scars, creating intricate patterns across his skin. His movements were precise but somehow ancient, as if each gesture carried the weight of centuries. He placed his items on the counter without speaking, watching her with those strange golden eyes. "Good evening," Lily said with a smile, scanning the first item. "Nasty weather out there tonight." The man tilted his head slightly, studying her face. "Indeed. The rain carries memories." His voice was deep and resonant, with an accent she couldn't place. Each word seemed carefully chosen, as if English wasn't his first language, though he spoke it perfectly. As Lily rang up his groceries, she found herself stealing glances at him. There was something about his presence that filled the small store, making the space feel both larger and smaller at the same time. His amber eyes never left her face, and she had the strange sensation that he was reading something written there that she couldn't see. "That'll be $47.38, she said, bagging his items. The old man reached into his coat and produced a card that looked unlike any credit or debit card she'd ever seen. It was made of some kind of dark metal with symbols etched across its surface that seemed to shift in the light. He inserted it into the card reader, but after a moment, the machine beeped with an error message. "I'm sorry," Lily said, trying the card again. "It's not going through. Do you have another form of payment?" The man stared at the card reader as if it had personally offended him. He tried the card once more, then examined it with a frown that suggested this was an entirely new experience. "It appears," he said slowly, "that I have encountered a difficulty." Lily watched as he searched through his pockets, finding nothing but lint and what looked like a small, iridescent stone. The confusion on his face was so genuine that she felt a pang of sympathy. She'd seen this before, people who found themselves short of money for basic necessities, too proud to ask for help. Without thinking, she reached for her own wallet. "Don't worry about it," she said, pulling out her debit card. "I've got this." The man's golden eyes widened. "You would pay for my sustenance?" "It's just groceries," Lily said, running her card through the machine. "Everyone needs to eat, but you do not know me." Lily shrugged, entering her PIN. "Doesn't matter. We're all just trying to get by, right? Sometimes we need a little help." The transaction went through and she handed him the receipt along with his bags. The old man stood there for a long moment, staring at the receipt as if it contained the secrets of the universe. When he looked up at her again, his expression had changed completely. The confusion was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like wonder. "What is your name, young one?" Lily Chen." He repeated her name slowly as if committing it to memory. "Lily Chen, you have shown kindness to one who had forgotten it existed in this universe." There was something in the way he said universe that made her pause. Not world or place, but universe, as if he was speaking about something much larger than their small corner of Portland. "You've just had some bad luck with your card," she said. "Happens to everyone." The man gathered his bags and walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. "No," he said quietly. "Not everyone would have done what you just did. You saw a stranger in need and helped without question, without expectation of reward. That is rare. Not really. Most people are pretty decent when it comes down to it. A strange smile crossed his face, sad and hopeful at the same time. I had begun to believe otherwise. He studied her face one more time, as if memorizing every detail. You have given me more than food tonight, Lily Chen. You have given me something I thought was lost forever. Before she could ask what he meant, he pushed through the door and disappeared into the rain. Lily watched through the window as he walked down the street, but within moments, the darkness and rain had swallowed him completely. She stood there for several minutes, feeling like something significant had just happened, though she couldn't explain what. The old man's words echoed in her mind, along with the intensity of those golden eyes. There had been something different about him, something that made her ordinary act of kindness feel like it had touched something ancient and profound. Shaking her head, Lily returned to her textbook. She had an exam tomorrow and couldn't afford to waste time wondering about strange customers. But as she tried to focus on her reading, she kept thinking about the way he'd said her name, as if it was something precious that needed to be protected. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the streets clean and carrying away any trace that the mysterious old man had ever been there at all. Lily's apartment building trembled like a leaf in an earthquake, rattling the windows and sending her coffee mug sliding across the kitchen table. She grabbed the edge of the table, thinking it was one of Portland's occasional seismic events, but the shaking felt wrong somehow, too rhythmic, too controlled, as if something massive was deliberately settling itself above the city. The vibrations stopped as suddenly as they'd started, leaving behind an eerie silence that felt heavier than the usual urban quiet. Even the traffic noise from the street below had ceased. Lily moved to her third-floor window and pushed aside the curtains, expecting to see the familiar view of downtown Portland stretching toward the river. Instead, she found herself staring at a hull of impossible size blocking out half the sky. The ship, if that's what it was, hung motionless above her neighborhood like a floating mountain. Its surface wasn't metal or any material she recognized, but something that looked like crystallized starlight, translucent and shimmering with colors that had no names. Patterns of light pulsed through its structure like a slow heartbeat, and the air around it seemed to bend and twist in ways that made her eyes water. Lily pressed her face against the glass, trying to comprehend what she was seeing. The vessel stretched from one end of her vision to the other, easily the size of several city blocks. Strange protrusions jutted from its hull at irregular intervals, covered in the same crystalline material that seemed to drink in the city lights and reflect them back as something entirely different. Her phone buzzed frantically on the table behind her. Emergency alerts flooded the screen faster than she could read them. Seek immediate shelter, unknown aircraft over Portland. This is not a drill. News notifications poured in with headlines that seemed torn from science fiction movies. Massive unidentified objects appear over major cities. Military responds to apparent extraterrestrial contact. With shaking hands, she opened her news app and found live footage from helicopter cameras, showing not one but 15 of the crystalline ships floating above different parts of the metropolitan area. Each one was unique in design but shared the same impossible beauty, the same way of bending light around their hulls. They cast no shadows despite their enormous size, as if they existed slightly outside normal space. The reporter's voice cracked with barely controlled panic as she spoke into her microphone. We're getting reports that similar vessels have appeared over major population centers worldwide. London, Tokyo, New York, Moscow, all report the same phenomenon. The objects appeared simultaneously at approximately 9:15 p.m. Pacific time, with no prior detection by radar or satellite systems. Lily sank into her chair, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. The old man from the grocery store flashed through her mind, his strange golden eyes and the way he'd spoken about the universe. She tried to push the thought away as ridiculous, but something cold was growing in her stomach. The television across the room had turned itself on, along with every electronic device in her apartment. Her laptop screen flickered to life, her tablet glowed on the coffee table, and even her old radio crackled with static. The emergency broadcast system shrieked from every speaker, but underneath it she could hear something else. A low harmonic tone that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Through her window, she could see people emerging from buildings up and down the street, all staring upward with the same expression of disbelief. Some were taking pictures with their phones, others were calling loved ones, and a few were simply standing frozen in place. In the distance, she could hear sirens wailing as emergency services struggled to respond to something they had no protocol for. The harmonic tone grew stronger, and suddenly every screen in her apartment displayed the same image. Not static or emergency broadcasts, but a symbol that looked like intertwining spirals surrounded by characters in an alphabet she'd never seen. The symbol pulsed with the same rhythm as the lights in the ship's hulls, and somehow, impossibly, she understood that it meant peace or greeting or both. Then the screens went black, and a voice spoke in perfect, unaccented English. "People of Earth, we are the Stellar Dominion. We come seeking one among you who has shown honor to our Lord Drakmor. We wish to speak with the human called Lily Chen." The silence that followed felt like the entire world holding its breath. Lily stared at the blank screen, certain she'd misheard. Her name couldn't have just been broadcast to the planet by alien visitors. That was impossible. She was nobody special, just a college student working in a grocery store. But even as she tried to deny it, she remembered the old man's strange card, his unusual way of speaking, those amber eyes that seemed to hold depths she couldn't fathom, the way he'd looked at her when she paid for his groceries, as if she'd done something miraculous instead of ordinary. Her phone rang, startling her so badly she nearly dropped it. The caller ID showed her mother's number. "Lily! Are you okay? Are you somewhere safe?" Her mother's voice was high with panic. "They're saying on the news that aliens are looking for someone with your name. It can't be you, right? There must be thousands of people named Lily Chen." "I'm fine, Mom," Lily managed, though her voice sounded strange to her own ears. "I'm at home. I'm safe. Good, stay inside and keep your doors locked. The military is setting up roadblocks everywhere. They're saying not to approach the ships or try to communicate with them." Her mother paused. "Lily, you haven't had any strange encounters lately, have you? Anyone unusual asking about you?" Before Lily could answer, she heard vehicles roaring up the street below. Through her window, she watched as black SUVs and military trucks surrounded her apartment building. Soldiers in combat gear poured out of the vehicles, taking positions around every entrance. Behind them came vans with satellite dishes and official-looking people in suits carrying briefcases. "Mom, I have to go," she whispered into the phone. "Lily, what's wrong? You sound scared." Someone was pounding on the door of her apartment hard enough to make the frame shake. An authoritative voice called out, "Miss Chen, this is Agent Rodriguez with the Department of Defense. We need to speak with you immediately. Please open the door." Lily looked from the door to the window, where the impossible ship continued to float in defiance of everything she thought she knew about the world. The pulsing lights in its hull seemed to be waiting for something, and with a growing sense of unreality, she realized they might be waiting for her. The pounding on the door grew more insistent. "Miss Chen, we know you're in there. This is a matter of national security. We're here to help you." She ended the call and walked slowly toward the door, each step feeling like she was crossing into a different world. When she reached for the doorknob, her hand was steady despite everything. Whatever was happening, whatever the old man had been, her simple act of kindness had somehow pulled Earth into something much larger than she'd ever imagined. The crystalline ship above continued its patient vigil, beautiful and alien against the night sky, waiting for her decision. Agent Rodriguez turned out to be a woman in her 40s with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She entered Lily's apartment, followed by a small army of officials, each more serious-looking than the last. They filled her tiny living space with their presence, turning her safe haven into something that felt like a command center. "Ms. Chen," Agent Rodriguez said, settling into Lily's kitchen chair as if she belonged there. "I'm going to ask you some questions, and I need you to answer them honestly. The fate of this first contact situation may depend on your cooperation." Lily sat on her couch, surrounded by men and women in expensive suits who were setting up equipment she didn't recognize. Laptops opened, devices beeped to life, and someone was installing what looked like a small satellite dish on her fire escape. Through it all, the massive ship continued to hover outside her window, its crystalline hull casting strange patterns of light across her walls. "First contact situation," Lily repeated, still struggling to accept that this was really happening. "As of 37 minutes ago, humanity made contact with an extraterrestrial civilization," Agent Rodriguez said matter-of-factly. 15 ships appeared simultaneously over major population centers worldwide. They've made no aggressive moves, but they've made one specific demand. They want to speak with you. A man in a Navy uniform leaned forward. Ms. Chen, have you had any unusual encounters in the past few days? Anyone asking strange questions, behaving oddly, or seeming out of place? The memory of the old man flooded back with perfect clarity. His golden eyes, the way he'd examined ordinary grocery items like they were alien artifacts. His strange card that wouldn't work in any earthly machine. The reverence in his voice when he'd thanked her for paying his bill. There was someone, she said slowly, last night at the grocery store where I work. An elderly man. He couldn't pay for his groceries, so I covered it for him. The officials exchanged glances loaded with meaning. Agent Rodriguez pulled out a tablet and began typing rapidly. Describe him in detail. Everything you remember. Lily closed her eyes, bringing back every moment of the encounter. Tall, maybe 6'2" or 6'3", but hunched over. Very thin, like he hadn't been eating well. White hair slicked back from the rain. Wearing an old gray coat. She paused, remembering the most striking feature. His eyes were amber, almost gold. And his hands had these scars that looked like burn marks, but in patterns like they were decorative. What did he buy? This from a woman who'd introduced herself as Dr. Sarah Park from the CDC. Basic stuff. Bread, cheese, soup, tea, honey. Maybe $47 worth. Lily looked around at the assembled officials. Why, who do you think he was? Instead of answering, Agent Rodriguez held up her tablet showing a rough sketch based on Lily's description. Does this look accurate? The drawing was surprisingly good, capturing the old man's gaunt features and those unforgettable eyes. That's him. But I don't understand what this has to do with the ships. A new voice spoke from the corner of the room. Because, Ms. Chen, we believe that man was not human. Everyone turned to look at a tall, thin man in a black suit who'd been quietly observing from beside her bookshelf. He had the kind of face that seemed designed to be forgettable, except for his eyes, which were sharp with intelligence. Dr. Michael Torres, xenobiology consultant, he introduced himself. Based on your description and the timing of events, we believe you encountered an alien reconnaissance operative. The question is why they chose to make contact with you specifically. I didn't make contact with anyone, Lily protested. I just paid for his groceries. That's it. That's all I did, but why? Dr. Torres moved closer, studying her face intently. You'd never seen this individual before. He clearly had nothing to offer you in return. From a purely rational standpoint, why would you spend your own money on a stranger? The question caught Lily off guard. She'd never really thought about it in those terms. Because he needed help. Because it was the right thing to do. The right thing according to whom? What moral framework were you operating under? Lily stared at him, feeling like she was being dissected. I don't know what you mean. He was hungry, I had money, so I helped him. That's what people do. Dr. Torres exchanged a meaningful look with Agent Rodriguez. Ms. Chen, most people don't actually behave that way. Studies show that the majority of individuals, when faced with a stranger's need, will find reasons to avoid getting involved. Self-preservation, resource conservation, distrust of unfamiliar people. Your response was statistically unusual. Before Lily could respond, every device in the room began to emit the same harmonic tone they'd heard earlier. The screens flickered and once again displayed the symbol of intertwining spirals. Agent Rodriguez barked orders into her radio while technicians scrambled to record whatever was about to happen. The symbol faded, replaced by an image that made everyone in the room fall silent. It showed the interior of one of the crystalline ships, vast spaces filled with technology that seemed more grown than built. And standing in the center of it all was the old man from the grocery store, except he wasn't old anymore. He stood tall and straight, his white hair now flowing like liquid starlight, his amber eyes blazing with an inner fire. The scars on his hands weren't scars at all, but intricate patterns that glowed with the same light as the ship around him. He wore robes that seemed to be cut from space itself, deep black fabric scattered with points of light like distant stars. When he spoke, his voice filled the room despite coming from the small speakers on the devices. Greetings, people of Earth. I am Lord Drakmore of the Stellar Dominion. I have walked among you in disguise to learn the nature of your species, as is our custom before extending an offer of alliance. Lily felt the blood drain from her face. The strange old man who couldn't work a credit card reader was an alien lord commanding a fleet of starships. I had nearly concluded that your species was driven primarily by self-interest and acquisition of resources. Your entertainment media portrays violence and competition as virtues. Your news reports focus on conflict and division. Your economic systems reward those who accumulate wealth while others suffer. His golden eyes seemed to look directly at Lily through the screen. I was prepared to depart and leave your world to its chosen path. But then, he continued, I encountered one among you who demonstrated something I had not seen in my travels across the galaxy. True kindness without expectation of reward. Compassion extended to a stranger without question or hesitation. In that moment, Lily Chen showed me that humanity possesses something rare and precious in this universe. Agent Rodriguez leaned forward. What is it you want from us? To extend an invitation, Drakmor replied. The stellar dominion spans thousands of worlds, each member species contributing their unique strengths to our collective prosperity. Humanity would be welcomed if you choose to join us, but such a decision requires a representative who truly embodies your species' potential for good. The image zoomed in on Drakmor's face, those impossible eyes seeming to look directly at Lily. I invite Lily Chen to come aboard our flagship as Earth's ambassador. If she agrees, formal negotiations will begin. If not, we will respect your choice and depart. But understand this, the opportunity may not come again. The transmission ended, leaving the room in stunned silence. Lily felt every eye in the room turn to her, the weight of an impossible choice settling on her shoulders. A few hours ago, her biggest concern had been passing her psychology exam. Now she was being asked to represent all of humanity to an alien civilization. Ms. Chen, Agent Rodriguez said quietly, I think we need to talk. The war room in the underground facility beneath NORAD hummed with activity as screens displayed data streams from around the globe. Lily sat at a conference table surrounded by the highest-ranking military officials, diplomats, and scientists that Earth could assemble on short notice. She felt like a child who'd accidentally wandered into a meeting of world leaders, which wasn't far from the truth. General Patricia Hamilton, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, stood before a massive screen showing tactical information about the alien fleet. What we know so far, she began, is that these ships represent technology at least 1,000 years beyond our current capabilities. They appeared without any detection by our most advanced sensor systems. They maintain position using no visible means of propulsion, and they've made no aggressive moves despite clearly having the capability to destroy us. Dr. Torres added his analysis from the other end of the table. Based on energy readings, each ship could level a major city with ease. Instead, they're using their power to maintain what appears to be some kind of diplomatic holding pattern. This suggests a civilization with extremely advanced conflict resolution protocols. Or they're playing with us, growled Admiral James Burke, letting us know how outmatched we are before making their real demands, Agent. Rodriguez activated a new display, showing intercepted communications between the ships. Actually, Admiral, we've been monitoring their internal communications for the past 6 hours. Most of it is in languages our computers can't even begin to translate. But we've detected something interesting. She highlighted specific transmission patterns. They're not talking to each other like a military fleet. The communication patterns suggest a formal court proceeding. A court? Lily spoke for the first time in an hour. What kind of court? Unknown. But the ship that contacted you appears to be serving as a kind of judge or arbitrator. The others are presenting arguments in what seems to be a highly ritualized format. Agent Rodriguez turned to face Lily directly. Ms. Chen, we need to know everything about your interaction with their representative. Every word, every gesture, every detail you can remember. Lily took a deep breath and told the story again, but this time she found herself remembering details she'd missed before. The way Drakmor had moved through the store, examining products with the careful attention of someone studying an alien culture. How he'd traced the labels with his fingers as if reading them taught him something profound about humanity. The genuine confusion when his card failed, as if the concept of insufficient funds was entirely foreign to him. He called me Young One, she added. Not just young, but Young One, like he was very, very old. Dr. Torres leaned forward intently. Anything else about his speech patterns? The way he phrased things? He talked about forgetting that kindness existed in this universe, not in the world, in the universe. And when I said most people are decent, he looked sad and said he'd begun to believe otherwise. Lily paused, remembering that strange moment. It was like he'd been hurt by someone or something, deeply hurt, and had given up hope. The room fell quiet as the implications sank in. Finally, Dr. Torres spoke. Ms. Chen, I think you may have encountered one of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. And somehow you managed to remind him why life is worth protecting. Before anyone could ask what he meant, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. The main screen lit up with an incoming transmission marked Priority Alpha. General Hamilton authorized the connection. And once again they found themselves looking at Lord Drakmore. But this time something was different. The space around him seemed larger, more vast, and as the camera pulled back they could see he wasn't alone. Beings of dozens of different species surrounded him, all watching the transmission with expressions that ranged from curiosity to concern. Some were humanoid, others defied easy description, but all carried themselves with the bearing of high-ranking officials. "People of Earth," Drakmore began, "it has been brought to my attention that you require additional information before making your decision." "Very well. Allow me to provide context." The background shifted and suddenly they were looking not at the ship's interior but at space itself, filled with more vessels than could be easily counted. Ships of every imaginable design stretched across the starfield, from sleek crescents to vast geometric structures that looked like floating cities. "I am Lord Drakmore, First Admiral of the Eternal Fleet, Keeper of the Stellar Peace, Guardian of 1,000 worlds." His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "For 3 millennia I have served the Stellar Dominion, expanding its borders and bringing order to chaos. I have conquered star systems that refused peaceful integration. I have ended wars that had raged for centuries. I have been both protector and destroyer as necessity demanded." The image shifted again, showing battles between fleets so vast they dimmed stars, worlds transforming from barren rock to garden paradises, beings of countless species working together in impossible harmony. But conquest, even righteous conquest, leaves scars on the soul. With each victory, each necessary act of violence, I grew more distant from the reasons we fight. The protection of life, the nurturing of potential, the celebration of what makes each species unique and valuable. Drakmore's golden eyes seemed to look directly through the screen at Lily. I began to see only the darkness in sentient beings, their capacity for cruelty, their willingness to sacrifice others for personal gain, their fear of anything different from themselves. The assembled alien officials nodded solemnly, clearly understanding the burden their leader carried. "When we detected your species, I expected more of the same. Your planet is divided into competing nations. Your people wage war over resources and ideology, your strongest prey upon your weakest." The image showed Earth from space, beautiful and blue but scarred with the lights of cities and the smoke of industry. "I took human form and walked among you, seeking confirmation that you were another species driven by selfishness and fear." Lily felt tears forming in her eyes as she began to understand what her simple act of kindness had meant to this ancient being. "In market after market, I observed your people. I saw them ignore those in need, step over those who had fallen, choose personal comfort over communal good. I was preparing to recommend that Earth be left to develop in isolation until you either destroyed yourselves or learned wisdom through suffering." Drakmore's voice grew softer. "Then I encountered Lily Chen." The transmission focused on his face, and Lily could see something in those golden eyes that hadn't been there before. Hope, fragile but real. She saw a stranger who needed help and helped without question. No calculation of personal benefit, no demand for recognition or reward. She simply acted with compassion because it was the right thing to do. He paused, and when he continued, his voice carried a weight of emotion that made the air seem heavier. "In that moment, she reminded me of something I had forgotten in 3,000 years of war and conquest. She reminded me why life is precious, why beings are worth protecting, why love is stronger than fear." General Hamilton cleared her throat. "Lord Drakmore, what exactly are you proposing?" "The Stellar Dominion operates on a principle of voluntary membership. We extend invitations to species that demonstrate potential for growth and contribution to our collective prosperity. Earth has that potential as proven by individuals like Lily Chen. But the decision must be freely made, and it must be represented by someone who embodies your species' highest virtues." The camera pulled back to show the vast assembly of beings surrounding Drakmore. "The High Council has reviewed the evidence of humanity's potential. They have agreed to extend an invitation, but only if Lily Chen serves as your initial ambassador. She alone has demonstrated the qualities we value most in our member species." Admiral Burke leaned forward aggressively. "And if we refuse?" If we choose our own representatives? Drakmore's expression didn't change, but somehow the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Then you will have chosen, and we will respect that choice. The Stellar Dominion does not force membership upon unwilling species. We will depart and leave you to your own path. For how long? Dr. Torres asked quietly. Until you develop faster-than-light travel and seek us out among the stars, or until you no longer exist to make that choice. Drakmore's meaning was clear without being threatening. They would have one chance, and this was it. The transmission ended, leaving the room in heavy silence. Lily looked around at the faces of Earth's most powerful people, all of them looking back at her with expressions ranging from hope to desperation, to barely concealed panic. She was nobody special, just a college student who'd helped a stranger buy groceries. But somehow that simple act had caught the attention of beings who commanded fleets of starships and held the fate of worlds in their hands. Now they were asking her to speak for all of humanity, to make decisions that would echo through history. The weight of it should have crushed her, but instead she found herself thinking about the old man's eyes when she'd paid for his food. The surprise, the gratitude, the sudden rekindling of something that had been lost. Maybe that was all anyone could really do. Show kindness when the opportunity arose and hope it mattered to someone who needed it. The question was whether she was brave enough to bet Earth's future on that simple philosophy. The secure conference room felt smaller than it had hours earlier, despite holding the same number of people. President Martinez had arrived from Washington along with the Secretary of State and the UN Secretary General, turning the gathering into an impromptu council for the future of human civilization. Lily sat at the head of the table, still wearing the jeans and sweater she'd put on that morning when her biggest concern was a psychology exam. The technological assessment is staggering, Dr. Elizabeth Chen, the president's science advisor, was saying as she gestured to holographic displays floating above the table. Based on what we've observed from their ships alone, the Stellar Dominion has mastered technologies we're only beginning to theorize about. Faster-than-light travel, matter manipulation at the molecular level, energy sources that appear to draw power from space itself. Secretary of State Williams leaned forward. What are they offering specifically? We know they want Lily as an ambassador, but what does Earth get in return? Agent Rodriguez activated a new set of displays showing data collected from diplomatic channels. According to their communications, membership in the Stellar Dominion includes access to their entire technological database, protection from hostile species they've encountered in their expansion, and participation in what they call the Great Work. Which is? President Martinez asked. Unknown. They've been deliberately vague about that aspect. But based on energy signatures we've detected from their home worlds, it appears to involve large-scale manipulation of stellar phenomena. We're talking about beings who can move stars, create artificial solar systems, possibly even influence the structure of space-time itself. General Hamilton brought up tactical displays showing the alien fleet formations. From a military standpoint, their protection would be invaluable. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected at least 17 potentially hostile civilizations within 100 light-years of Earth. We're like a medieval village that's just discovered it's surrounded by industrial nations, some of which have nuclear weapons. But there's a catch, Dr. Torres interjected, his voice heavy with concern. Everything we've learned about the Stellar Dominion suggests they don't just invite species to join. They transform them. Member species undergo what they call evolutionary acceleration, which appears to involve genetic, psychological, and cultural modifications to optimize them for their role in the collective. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Lily felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of modifications? We don't know, but based on analysis of the different species we've observed in their transmissions, each one has been altered to fulfill specific functions within their civilization. Some appear to be optimized for scientific research, others for manufacturing, others for what might be diplomatic or administrative roles. Dr. Torres pulled up comparative images. They're not enslaved, but they're not entirely the same species they started as either. President Martinez turned to face Lily directly. Ms. Chen, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Are you prepared to potentially sacrifice your humanity for the future of our species? The question hit Lily like a physical blow. She'd been thinking about representing Earth, about speaking for humanity's interests. But she hadn't fully grasped that accepting might mean she would no longer be entirely human herself. Before she could answer, the harmonic tone filled the room again, and the displays activated to show Lord Drakmore. But this time he wasn't alone. Standing beside him was a being that made everyone in the room catch their breath. She had once been human. That much was clear from her basic structure. But she had been transformed into something magnificent and terrifying. Her skin had a pearl-like luminescence. Her eyes were pools of liquid starlight, and her hair moved as if floating in water despite the apparent absence of gravity. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that made the air itself seem to sing. Greetings, people of Earth. I am Ambassador Vera, formerly of the world you call Kepler 442b. I serve as the Dominion's representative for species undergoing integration. Lily stared at the transformed woman, trying to imagine herself changed in such fundamental ways. I understand your concerns about the nature of Dominion membership, Vera continued. Allow me to address them directly. The evolutionary acceleration process is not forced transformation, but guided evolution, helping each species reach its fullest potential. I was once much like your Ms. Chen, a simple individual who showed compassion to a Dominion scout. The changes I underwent enhanced my natural empathy and communication abilities, allowing me to serve as a bridge between species. Dr. Torres leaned forward. What did you sacrifice? What did you lose in the process? Vera's expression became thoughtful. I lost my limitations. The fear that once paralyzed me when facing the unknown, the anger that clouded my judgment in difficult situations, the selfishness that made me prioritize my own comfort over the well-being of others. She paused, and her starlight eyes seemed to focus directly on Lily. I gained the ability to truly understand other beings, to feel their pain and joy as if it were my own, to help resolve conflicts that had seemed impossible. But are you still you? Lily asked quietly. I'm more myself than I ever was before, Vera replied with absolute certainty. The essence of who I was, my values, my dreams, my love for others, all of that remains. But I now have the capability to act on those values in ways I never could have imagined. Lord Drakmore stepped forward. The choice before your species is not whether to change. Change is inevitable for any civilization that wishes to survive in this galaxy. The question is whether you will guide your own evolution, or have it forced upon you by circumstance and conflict. He gestured, and the display showed images of devastated worlds. We have encountered 47 species that chose isolation over integration. Of those, 12 destroyed themselves through war or environmental collapse. 28 were conquered by hostile civilizations before developing adequate defenses. 7 remain in isolated development, but our projections suggest only 2 will survive the next millennium without intervention. The images shifted to show thriving worlds filled with beings working together across species lines. Meanwhile, the 312 species that chose to join us have not only survived, but flourished beyond their original potential. They explore the mysteries of existence, create wonders that span galaxies, and protect countless worlds from the darkness that lurks between the stars. President Martinez stood up. Lord Drakmore, we appreciate the opportunity you're offering, but surely you understand that we need time to consider such a momentous decision. We're talking about the future of our entire species. Time is precisely what you do not have, Drakmore replied gravely. Our long-range sensors have detected a hostile fleet approaching your system. The Void Seekers, a machine intelligence that consumes biological matter to fuel their expansion. They will arrive in approximately 18 of your months. Alone, Earth has no hope of survival against them. With Dominion protection and technology, you would be safe. The room erupted in urgent whispers and hushed conversations. Lily felt the weight of the moment crushing down on her. Not only was she being asked to represent humanity, but the decision had to be made under the threat of imminent invasion. There is one more thing, Drakmore said, and his voice cut through the chaos in the room. The position I offer to Ms. Chen is not simply that of ambassador. The Dominion has need of a new guardian, one who can speak for the values of compassion and selflessness that seem to come naturally to your species. Should she accept and prove worthy, she would become one of the 5 beings who guide the destiny of all member worlds. Lily's mouth went dry. They weren't just asking her to represent Earth. They were offering her a position of power that would affect countless civilizations across the galaxy. The choice must be made within 72 of your hours, Drakmore continued. After that, the opportunity will be withdrawn, and we will depart to marshal our defenses against the Void Seekers. Earth will face its fate alone. The transmission ended, leaving the room in stunned silence. Lily looked around at the faces of Earth's leaders, all of them waiting for her decision. In less than 3 days, she would have to choose not just her own future, but the future of every human being who had ever lived or ever would live. The college student who had paid for a stranger's groceries now held the fate of 2 civilizations in her hands. Lily stood alone on the observation deck of the transport that would take her to Drakmore's flagship, watching Earth shrink to a blue marble against the star-filled void. 72 hours had passed since the ultimatum, and the decision had been made, not by world leaders or committees or vote, but by a young woman who had looked into the depths of space and chosen hope over fear. The debate had raged for 2 days straight. Military advisors argued for resistance. Scientists pleaded for more time to study the alien technology. Politicians worried about sovereignty and the preservation of human culture. But in the end, it had come down to a simple question that only Lily could answer. Did she trust the sincerity of the being she had helped in a grocery store? She had thought about his eyes when she'd paid for his food, the genuine surprise and gratitude that no amount of acting could have faked. She remembered the sadness in his voice when he spoke of losing faith in kindness, and the wonder when she had shown him it still existed. Whatever else Lord Drakmore might be, in that moment, he had been someone who needed help, and helping him had felt right. Second thoughts? Agent Rodriguez had accompanied her to the transport as Earth's official representative. The older woman had become something of a mentor during the intense days of preparation, helping Lily understand the protocols and procedures that would govern first contact. A few million, Lily admitted, turning away from the viewport. But not about the decision itself, just about whether I'm the right person to make it. You're the only person who could have made it, Rodriguez replied. Do you know what convinced me you were right to accept their offer? Lily shook her head. When President Martinez asked if you were prepared to sacrifice your humanity for our species, you looked terrified. But when Drakmore offered you power over countless worlds, you looked sad. Anyone else would have had those reactions reversed. Rodriguez smiled. You're afraid of losing yourself, but sorry that so much responsibility is being placed on your shoulders. That's exactly the kind of person who should have that responsibility. The transport shuddered slightly as it docked with the Dominion flagship. Through the connection tunnel, Lily could see the crystalline corridors of the alien vessel, walls that seemed to pulse with living light. Her escorts, a mixture of human security personnel and Dominion representatives, formed up around her as they prepared to make the crossing. Remember, Rodriguez said quietly, you're not just representing Earth, you're representing the best of what humanity can be. Show them the same kindness you showed an old man buying groceries, but on a scale that spans the galaxy. The airlock cycled open, and Lily stepped into a world beyond anything she had imagined. The corridor stretched ahead of her like a tunnel through liquid starlight, its walls transparent enough to show the vast spaces of the ship beyond. Beings of dozens of different species moved through those spaces with purpose and grace, each one adapted to their role but somehow still retaining the essence of what they had once been. Lord Drakmore waited for her in a chamber that seemed to exist outside normal space, its boundaries lost in swirling galaxies and nebulae. He appeared in his true form now, not the ancient dragon of Earth mythology, but something far more magnificent. His scales were like crystallized time itself, shifting through colors that had no names, and his eyes held the accumulated wisdom of millennia. Lily Chen, he said, and his voice carried harmonics that spoke directly to her soul. You have chosen to trust us with your world's future. Now we must discover if that trust was well placed. I didn't choose because I trust you completely, Lily said, surprising herself with her honesty. I chose because I trust the person you were when you needed help. Whatever you've become since then, that person is still in there somewhere. Drakmore's massive head tilted, considering her words. Wise. Trust should be earned, not given freely. You will have time to observe us, to learn our ways, to judge whether we are worthy of the faith you have shown. He gestured with one wing toward an alcove where Ambassador Vera waited. But first, you must decide how much of yourself you are willing to transform. Lily approached Vera, studying the luminescent being who had once been human. Does it hurt? The opposite, Vera replied. It's like finally being able to breathe after a lifetime of suffocation. Your empathy, your natural ability to understand and care for others will be enhanced beyond anything you can imagine. You'll be able to feel the hopes and fears of entire civilizations. to help resolve conflicts before they become wars. And the cost? You will outlive everyone you've ever known. Your perspective will expand beyond the concerns of a single world or species. You will carry the weight of decisions that affect trillions of lives. Vera's starlight eyes met Lily's. But you will also have the power to make those lives better, to guide civilizations toward prosperity and peace, to ensure that the kindness you showed in a grocery store echoes across the galaxy for millennia to come. Lily closed her eyes, thinking of her parents, her friends, the life she was leaving behind. Then she thought of the void seekers approaching Earth, of the hostile civilizations that surrounded humanity in the darkness of space, of all the species that might benefit from having someone who understood the value of simple kindness in a position of power. Will I still be me? You will be the best version of yourself, Drakmor answered. The you that exists when you act without fear, without doubt, without the limitations that hold back your natural compassion. Lily opened her eyes and nodded. Then let's begin. The transformation took place in a chamber filled with swirling energies that rewrote her biology on a fundamental level. She felt her awareness expanding beyond the confines of her skull, beyond the boundaries of her species, until she could sense the thoughts and feelings of every being on the ship. Instead of overwhelming her, it felt like coming home to a family she had never known she had. When it was over, she stood before a mirror that showed her new form. Her appearance hadn't changed as dramatically as Vera's, but her eyes now held flecks of gold that matched Drakmor's, and there was something in her expression that spoke of depths beyond her years. Most importantly, she felt the same essential self that had always driven her to help others, now amplified and given the tools to act on a cosmic scale. Years passed, though time flowed differently aboard the Dominion vessels that sailed between stars. Lily, now guardian of the Western Spiral, mediated disputes between civilizations, guided the development of newly contacted species, and helped shape policies that affected quadrants of the galaxy. Earth flourished under Dominion protection, its people gradually adapting to their role as the Dominion's specialists in empathy and conflict resolution. The Void Seekers came as predicted, but they found not a defenseless world but a strongly defended Dominion system. The machine intelligence that had consumed dozens of civilizations was turned back, its advanced fleets destroyed by technologies that turned their own weapons against them. Standing on the observation deck of her flagship, Guardian Lily Chen looked out at the spiral arm that was now under her protection. Millions of worlds spun in space before her, each one home to beings who lived and loved and hoped for better futures. She had kept her promise to show them the same kindness she had shown an old man in a grocery store, but on a scale that spanned light years. Drakmor joined her at the viewport, his ancient presence a comfort in the vastness of space. "Do you ever regret your choice?" he asked. Lily smiled, thinking of the girl she had been, working in a small store and worrying about college exams. "I regret that it took so long for us to find each other. How many species suffered because no one was there to show them kindness when they needed it most? And how many will be saved because you were willing to step forward when the moment came?" Drakmor replied, "The galaxy is a vast and often cruel place, but it is better for having guardians who remember that everyone, even ancient dragons, sometimes needs someone to help them buy groceries." In the distance, a new star was being born from the collision of cosmic dust and hope, its light destined to travel for eons before reaching the eyes of beings who would wonder at its beauty. Lily watched it ignite and thought about the simple truth that had brought her to this moment. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is help a stranger in need, because you never know when that stranger might hold the fate of worlds in their hands. The kindness that had started with $47.38 now protected trillions of lives across the galaxy, proving that compassion, like starlight, could travel any distance and illuminate even the darkest corners of the universe.